Hello and welcome to A Woman's Heart. We are in for a treat today. Today we have Jaime Jo Wright as part of our summer reading series.
Hello.
Hello, Jamie, and thanks so much for joining us
Hello.
today.
It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
You are very welcome. And I know for the theme of your book, we've had such a lovely and delightful light conversation to before recording.
Oh, yes. Yes, exactly. I am a delightfully light person regardless of what I write.
Very good. Well, we're going to get to that because I
Yes.
always like to get to know my guest a little, let my audience get to know my guest a little. So tell us something about yourself and something fun that may or may not normally be in your bio. I
Oh,
already gave you
sure.
permission for something that is in your bio, but it's still so fun.
Well, it is kind of fun, yeah. I live in Wisconsin. I live in the woods of Wisconsin, deep in the woods, and I am surrounded constantly by wildlife, deer, turkey,
Mhm.
bobcat, bear, etc. So I'm a good old country girl at heart. And I love to write, obviously, because I've been writing fiction for quite some time.
Yes,
I'm a
yes, you have.
storyteller. I'm married to a youth pastor, and we have two kids that are teenagers now, which I thought would be
Oh,
easier, and they're not. So
no.
someone didn't warn me about that.
Sorry. Yeah, somebody should have
Yeah,
warned you.
that would have been great. So for anybody raising children, this is your warning. It does not get easier. It gets harder. They actually have opinions when they're teenagers.
Yeah, they
I mean,
do.
they do when they're
Can't just
three,
put them in
but
timeout.
right. Timeouts don't work when you're 16 and have a driver's license, although taking the car away does. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I'm also, if you follow me on social media, I am known as, well on my way to becoming the crazy old cat lady, and I will embrace that with my whole heart. I currently have five cats, and they all are my babies. And
hmm
it's unfortunate my husband doesn't really like cats, so we have a little bit of conflict in our marriage. Um,
Oh, okay.
good fun conflict though.
Yes.
But something that people don't really know about me is aside from the cats, we also have an axolotl, which
Yes.
I think as you and I were talking, they are actually legal to own in Wisconsin.
And they are
And
not in Virginia. It
and
is
they are not in
illegal in Virginia.
Virginia. When
Yes.
my son asked me if he could get an axolotl, I actually was like, they don't exist because I thought it was literally just a character off of Minecraft.
hmm
Um, but no, 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 no. They truly do exist, and they're actually really cute. They're kind of like
hmm
a cross between, I'd say, like an eel and a hush puppy, but they have really cute faces,
Yep.
and they're always perpetually smiling. So I actually really enjoy our axolotl.
Very
It's
good. Yeah. Well,
it's
if there was going to be an
serious.
amphibian or reptile in my house, they do actually, I will give you that they are kind of cute
They are.
for
They
that. I'm
are.
I'm not an amphibian reptile person. I just for me in my house, that's just not something I want in my house on
Well,
purpose.
being in the country, we've had just about everything. We've had snakes, we've had frogs, we've had crickets, we've had toads.
hmm
Um, I drew the line at spiders. I'm not an arachnid friend.
No. Mm-mm.
So that the line got drawn. My son wanted a scorpion. I said we live in Wisconsin for a reason. Bless
No.
everyone who lives in the South with scorpions. So we've drawn the line at scorpions and spiders.
Yeah, that is something that he will have to fulfill that dream once he is no longer in your
That
home.
that is pretty much what I
There
told
you go.
him.
He
I
can do
said
that once
those
he
are
moves
our
out.
dreams, and then if you want your mother to come visit, you'll
You're
have
gonna
to
have
get
to
rid of
lock it
them
away.
because I'm not coming, and you're not
No,
having grandchildren.
I'm
They will come live with their grandmother.
I'm with you on that one. I am totally with you on that one. I could
Oh.
probably visit with an axolotl in the house, but yeah, yeah.
Axolotls are almost like having fish because they never come out of the tank. They always live in water. They swim in
Mm,
an aquarium,
okay.
so it's kind of, yeah, you don't feel quite as invaded.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see
Yeah.
that. That is well that is fun. Well, for such a fun-loving personality, you kind of write some dark gothic thriller stuff.
I
Um,
do.
so how did I just got to how did that happen? Why do you love because I've read some suspense or
Hmm.
romantic suspense is what I would call it.
Right.
But this
Right.
is a notch above. I would put this more when you describe it as Gothic,
Hmm. Hmm.
and more of like the Gothic thriller. And
Yeah.
the book where the latest book that just came out, The Bookstore with 99 Doors.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it can be a little dark. So how did you get into writing such the genre?
It's really fascinating because I was never brave as a child. I was the one who was always running, like when you get up in the middle of the night to use the
Mhm.
restroom and you flush. I was always flush and run because you have to get back into bed before all the noises cease. Otherwise, you'll most assuredly be pulled into a closet and never return. I had a very vivid imagination. I
Mhm.
was also really tender-hearted. Like I was the child that was not allowed to watch nature shows
Oh, so you
because
did not watch Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
no, we tried. My parents thought it was a good educational tool, especially since I was homeschooled. But they had to ban me from it because I cried over every antelope that
Mm.
was
Yeah.
slaughtered by the claws of a lion.
Hmm.
And in fact, I even have a bag that I take to church every Sunday that says Jesus, books, and antelope. Because I still weep for the antelope that we have lost to nature. So I'm kind of a softie when it comes. I'm a big softie when it comes to animals. Um, I've always been a bit of a fraidy cat. I'm not an adventurer, daredevilish. However, when I was in middle school, I started picking up the classics to read. I always read Nancy Drew, Trixie Belden, those types of things. But I
Okay.
started picking up the classics. And if you read classics like Charles Dickens, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Edgar Allan Poe,
Hmm.
Charlotte Bronte, they're all they all have that gothic, mysterious,
Yeah.
dark, haunting element that always makes you wonder what's lurking around the corner.
Mm.
But when you read their stories, there's some sort of resolution that comes, and it's almost poetic or lyrical in the resolution. And I was like, I just became so fascinated with the concept of that, and then merging that with the Christian faith. Like, how does that work, right?
Yeah.
And how does the concepts of the dark shadows and hauntings and the ghosts and ghouls and things like that, how does that
Mhm.
all be reconciled within a faith context?
Yeah.
And so that became something that I started to explore. And I also love history. I love old things. I joke that I live my house. Everybody's like, "What's your home aesthetic?" And I'm like, "Mine is pawn shop." Because I have a little bit of everything and nothing really fits the theme. It's just all old. And I've always wondered, like, when I pick up a teapot or I pick up a knickknack or something that's an antique, I'm like, who touched this? Like, if this could
Mm.
speak, what stories would it tell that it witnessed that we will never know? But yet, this item, which is 125 or 200 years old, it witnessed centuries of stories. And
Yeah.
so all of that merged into my love of writing. It's called dual time fiction, where half the stories in present day, and then the other half you travel back to a different time period, and the mysteries and the elements of legacy that twist and weave its way through life.
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
really long answer, but
Yeah,
that's my
well, no, that's okay. That was kind of that answered some of the other questions that I had had about, mixing that with the faith because you don't
yeah.
normally those two don't
No.
normally get mixed and
Mm-mm.
that. And I am gonna, before I forget and we go off track, this will be a little bit of a side note, but as I was reading, I really had to giggle when your character was reading the scary book that was a fiction book.
Yes,
It's a completely made up book that she
it
was reading.
is. Yes.
And she was reading this and she was getting scared. And she talked about how she didn't think she could read the scary book anymore. And
Hmm.
so she would have to go to her favorite author, Pepper Basham. And I had to just giggle because Pepper has been on the show as part of the
Oh,
summer
yeah.
reading series before. And
Yeah.
it turns out you guys are great pals.
We are great pals. We are great pals. We often try to drop little tidbits of each other's stuff into our fiction books just
Yeah.
because it's fun. And we're so juxtaposed
Hmm.
with our
Very much.
genres. And we tease because I read very few of Pepper's books. And she reads very few of mine because we just simply, neither of us are attracted to each other's genres. And yet,
Okay.
from a personality standpoint, we are two peas in a pod, and we are constantly getting into trouble. And I just adore Pepper, and I adore her books and her faith and her writing from the standpoint of everything she stands for. I think is just fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I really did think that that was funny when I read that. I just thought it was really cool. And as I mentioned, when I first started reading your book, I was like, okay, I expected a bit of a thrill, suspense. I was like, oh, this really is kind of dark. And then I was like,
Mhm.
let me look into this more. And I love how one of the reviews in your bio, it says that you frequently have Scooby-Doo endings.
Yes.
And at that point, I went, oh, okay, so this will be okay. This will be fine. So even if you get a little dark in the books,
Yes.
it does kind of wrap up nicely.
It does. It does. And I love how Scooby-Doo becomes like this universal explanation because you don't usually have to explain much more beyond Scooby-Doo because
No, you
everyone
really
knows
don't.
that
It's like,
Scooby-Doo
okay,
is filled with monsters and villains and vampires and ghosts and paranormal. And then at the end, it's like, oh no, that's just the janitor with
yeah.
a sheet over his
Hmm.
head. And there's an
Yeah.
explanation for why this happened.
Yeah.
Um, in
Yeah.
fact, I think it would, in some cases, it would be easier to write an actual ghost story where it was really a
Ah,
ghost because it's
okay.
sometimes difficult to create ghostly circumstances and then
Mm-hmm.
have to try and figure out how you could reasonably explain that.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, there were a couple of things I was like, so
Mhm.
how exactly do you do that? But because you also talk about one of the things that I've said that I enjoy about the summer reading series is I just get to lose myself in a story.
Yeah.
But there are lessons and
Yeah.
things. And
Hmm.
when you can are writing some gothic things, you can get into some pretty heavy
Yes.
topics. And so you have some themes in there about mental illness
Hmm.
or PTSD
Hmm.
and addiction.
Hmm.
And one of the ones that the main character, she has cut herself off from her family because she doesn't think she can be healthy around them. And with so many people talking about being estranged from their families
Hmm.
nowadays,
Hmm.
I liked how you handled that. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about, well, any of those topics that I brought up and
Sure.
but about the estrangement and how you took her through the main character after you give, which we have not told people, a brief synopsis of the book with no spoilers.
Oh, and I have to give the synopsis. That's
Yeah.
great. Now your program just turned into a 3 hour program. Well, essentially, the Bookshop of 99 Doors is the story of two women separated, obviously, by a century. One of
Hmm.
them is alive shortly, I think about 25 years after the Civil War
Yep.
ended. She lives in Pennsylvania. She lives at Ambrose Fields Manor, and she's come to live there with her father, who is convalescing because he's very sick, and a lot of it does point toward some sort of mental illness
Yeah.
or struggle that way, which is
Hmm.
undiagnosed, especially in that time period.
Yeah,
And the
definitely.
story around the manor at the time that Minnie comes to it after the war is it's still sort of haunted, both in memory and supposedly in spirit by the after effects of the Civil War. And
Hmm.
so you have this area which is about 20 minutes outside of Gettysburg, which we all should know what happened in Gettysburg
Yeah.
during the war.
Hmm. It was a
And you
big
also
battle.
have yeah, you also have a house that supposedly there was a Civil War captain, a Union captain that was convalescing there right during the war, and something tripped in him, and he went off one night and murdered the other men that were beside him in the front parlor there in the house, and now supposedly he's never left. Dun dun dun. Hence
Mhm.
the haunting elements.
Yes.
Um, and then we have the present day story, which is Tris Bellamy. And she's come to Ambrose Fields Manor, which now in present day is a museum. And they've turned that front parlor that was supposedly the place of the original murder. They've turned the front parlor and library area into a bookshop, which is kind of like the gift shop of a tourist location.
Yep.
And she's escaped there because, like, as you said, she's estranged from her family. And she's separated herself from her family because her family is actually a family of paranormal investigators. And they run a podcast and a YouTube channel that is a million followers, and they go to places and they hunt the afterlife, and she has other family members that are into spiritualism and things like that. And as she grew up, she was so sensitive to the different elements that she really firmly believes that there is a spiritual world out there. But what Triss is struggling with is what is that defined by? Who
Yeah,
defines truth? What is truth? Is it all just relative? Are these things dangerous? Or are these things just intriguing and fun, like her brother likes to tease them? So
yeah,
she's in her quest for truth has not been well received by her family because they see that as a criticism. And so she's had to separate herself so that she can get clarity of mind. And she ends up at Ambrose Fields Manor. And then, of course, they end up hiring her family to come investigate this haunted manor. And she's like, what are
yes,
the odds?
yeah.
Now I'm stuck with my family again. So that's
Yeah.
the synopsis in as brief as I can make it.
Yes, well, and there you go. And I did like how you took that through with because there's some themes about getting reconnecting with her brother and working
Hmm.
through some of that thing with the forgiveness and
Hmm.
reconciliation
Yeah.
and being able to hold your own faith
Hmm.
while somebody else's beliefs are a little different, but still managing to get along. And was that something
Right.
you were trying to do on purpose, or did that just kind of come out as you were writing the story?
I was trying to do it on purpose from the standpoint that we really live in a culture with a lot of differing viewpoints,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of vitriol nowadays in having conversations with people that have differing religious backgrounds or differing
Yeah.
faiths or differing political beliefs, whatever, insert
Mhm.
here.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to do in the book with Triss and her brother specifically was to show two people that were somewhat aligned, but in other areas were extremely different.
Yeah.
And Triss had taken the route of absolutely cutting herself off.
Hmm.
And when the story begins, you also start to see that that also doesn't seem to be healthy for her emotionally, spiritually, and mentally either.
Yeah.
That's also damaging. And I think as a culture, we like to just cut and leave as a way of setting boundaries. And sometimes boundaries need to be set without removing yourself completely from the situation.
Hmm.
And so that's what I wanted to explore in the book with her and her brother was how do you take two people from very differing opinions, both on a quest to find out what truth is, and have them, in a sense, work together while maybe not always being aligned,
Hmm.
and show how God's grace can really shine through dialogue, healthy dialogue, understanding, through love, and through also a firmness in what you believe and not being willing to
Yeah.
back down either.
Yeah. Being able to hold your own
Absolutely.
beliefs and have a boundary of more, say, a picket fence than a 10-foot earthen wall.
Right,
Um,
right. We can shake hands over the fence and we can have
yeah.
conversations. We don't necessarily need to cross the fence and move in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, or adopt that person's point of view. But I learned so much by talking to people that I would, if I said it bluntly, frankly, don't agree with.
Mhm.
But I've learned so much by listening and having good, healthy dialogue.
Yeah.
And some of my greatest friends are people that I would never agree with from a faith background or a political background, and yet we're good friends.
Yeah.
And we still have good conversations and we challenge each other. And I think that's important. I think it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I liked one of the quotes that I pulled out that I really liked, and it is towards the end, but it's kind of
Mhm.
says the personal question for truth was a mixed journey for each person, but it was never intended to be a selfish one.
Mm,
And that one really stood out to me because as you were talking, it's like that can be what you are holding, but we can still have dialogue and we can still learn.
right.
And maybe once you learn something new, you can soften, change, keep. All of those are options.
Hmm.
And when you learn more about from somebody else and going forward, that your personal journey of truth doesn't necessarily have to be you and only you, me, myself, and I. It doesn't have to be a
Right.
selfish one. And I liked how you put that.
Right. And I want to make sure the distinction is made that I don't believe that truth is necessarily negotiable.
Hmm.
Truth is one of those things,
Yeah.
and I think that's where, as believers and Christians, because truth is traditionally anyway so defined and
Yeah.
so sure,
Hmm.
um, there's no room for compromise when it comes to truth. And I'm not suggesting we compromise truth
Yes.
or rewrite truth or become your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth. Those are some of the questions that I actually explore in the book. Can there be more than one truth, or is more than one truth a contradictory statement, right? And
Yeah.
so you have those questions. So I'm not saying that truth is negotiable, but what I am trying to get at in the book is having relationships with people is how Christ approached presenting the truth.
Yeah.
And without relationships and without conversation and without understanding and
Hmm.
grace, truth can become very hard.
Yeah.
And there's a time and a place for that, I suppose, but not necessarily in your first meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, this is true. And you can still do it kindly.
Yes.
And that and some of the other things that I noticed, the themes that you tackled in this book were mental illness
Hmm.
and addiction. And
Hmm.
was that something you wanted from the beginning? Is that something that's come from some of your own experiences that you wanted to be able to explore?
Hmm.
Why did you want to bring those themes into this book?
The mental illness part, without giving too many spoilers, but I don't think it's very hard to figure out what's happening with the father in the past,
Hmm.
having come out of the Civil War. He's a Civil War veteran.
Yeah.
Um, I come from a military family. My grandfather and my father were Army, and there is such a um, tough road that our military veterans walk
Hmm.
that years and
Yeah.
years later people just assume it's done and it's over. And I don't believe it ever leaves them, ever.
No.
And
No.
everyone handles it differently. And I wanted in this to give a nod because the Civil War was when we first in the United States started to recognize that there were after effects of mental health
Mhm.
for soldiers who had gone through. And, I look at war and none of it's pretty, but then imagine war against your own people
Yeah.
and the mental twisting that that does. And that again takes you back to that concept of the South believed it was true, the North believed it was
Yeah.
true, and they both believed they were right. And who was right? Who was wrong? Could they both be right? I mean, there's a lot of mental twisting that goes into that
Mhm.
you just start, there's fraction between families, and how does that affect? And so I wanted to go there because I wanted the reader to really think about how this affects all different aspects of life, and it can become a very, very serious issue
Yeah.
with mental illness and mental health
Yeah.
too. And so there's that aspect that we have to consider as well.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it really does. And then part of the other one of the other themes that I pulled out was the idea of secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And because then when you hold things secrets,
Hmm.
because I know at one point Minnie was kept being told, don't be like your mother, but she had no idea what that meant
Right.
because everything was so there, the idea of the secrets. And then we're told now if we hold things secret,
Hmm.
that gives more power to it. And it doesn't mean, like you said, it doesn't mean to air all of your dirty laundry to people who don't deserve it or whatever
Right.
else.
Right.
But that does mean don't necessarily just bury it and keep it all to yourself. Find a
Right.
safe place to
Right.
share and work through things and process, or
Hmm.
perhaps those people that need to know more information
Hmm.
so that they can know that with the
Yeah.
secrets that can be so incredibly damaging at
Yeah,
times.
it is. And that's one of the reasons why I like writing dual time and making it so that the past story, like one of the things with the dual time is very often as a reader, you can pick up a dual time book and you can fall in love with one or the other time period of stories. And I've read books where I'm like, I'm not such a keen fan of this time period, and I'll just read through the other time period and I'll get the gist of the story and skip the rest.
Mhm.
With my books, I try to write them where you can't do that because It's not going to make any sense. Like you
No.
literally have to read both because they're so woven together. But
Yeah.
the other reason that I do that is because that's really how life is, right?
Yeah.
When you look at who you are today, that has been formed, woven, influenced, good or bad,
Hmm.
positive or negative, by the people who came before you and left that legacy in your life.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to show in my books. And so I wanted to show that juxtaposition between Minnie and Tris in the story. They don't share family. They don't share family trees. And
No.
yet, and yet,
And yet,
all the legacies around this one place are influencing their lives.
yes.
And I wanted to show the readers how um, true that is and how that continues to happen to,
Hmm.
in our lives. And how do we
Yeah.
face how history impacts us today?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you did a very good job with that because their lives were so very entwined. And
Mhm.
one of the secrets was, and even when I looked, I will say, even when I read the title, it's a bookshop of 99 doors. Why would somebody do only 99 doors? It
Mm,
just seems at that point you make it an even 100. I mean, anybody with any sense of perfectionism or OCD or attention to detail is how I like to put it.
right, right.
Why 99 doors? So I even went in asking the question, and that right off the bat, it was the mystery of the 99 doors. And I had to think of like
Hmm.
National Treasure. I mean, it was
Hmm.
like the whole
Yeah,
what is, what is the 100th door? Is there a 100th door?
right,
Why the mystery? And
right.
what made you pick that?
Oh, so that's a funny story, really, because I was in my room one day trying to think up my next book, and I was watching a documentary on Malaysia.
Oh,
And
okay.
yes, yes, these are
Not
the
what I
things you
expected, but
you do
so
not
many of the
expect.
things in the book were not expected.
This will tell you why authors are very curious people because we find ideas in the most random of places. But there is a British ruins deep in the jungles of Malaysia
Oh,
that was built in the 19th century, and there's a lot of ruins around it now. I can't even remember exactly why it's there, but the locals in the area have a superstition because there's 99 doors in this mansion that used to exist and is now crumbling. And they have a rumored 100th door that, according to the locals, is a superstitious portal to the dark underworld. And of course,
oh.
the documentary is really hamming that up for all they can ham it up. But I got to thinking, ooh, what if you had a mansion? Because of course this is a natural segue. What if you have a mansion in Pennsylvania with 99 doors and a rumored 100th door that's not necessarily a portal to hell, but what if it was a portal to a ghostly entrance of a Civil War captain? And that's where my brain started going, and that's kind of
Okay.
how this got formed. So,
That is I certainly did not expect
no,
the
it's a
idea to come
complete
from
stretch.
Malaysia.
It's a complete stretch. It was made in Malaysia, and
Yes. Oh, wow. No, but that's really cool. Well, Jamie, you did a masterful job of, in my opinion. I did not want to put the book down. I kept wanting to
no.
read and find out more, which is what I look forward to. But just a great job of taking some of these themes, pulling them out, handling them with honesty but sensitivity at the
Mhm.
same time, and then
Yes.
lots of twists and turns. You go, wait a minute,
Oh,
how's
yes.
this person going to go? Oh, what about that?
Hmm.
So you really kept everybody guessing, and then showing how, yeah, it is, we're still being affected by all of this. And I
Yeah.
love your passion for the writing, and how you're able
Yeah.
to do this. And so one of the things that I do always like to ask, this is a
Hmm.
passion that God has given you,
Sure. Hmm.
and you had to work through and be able to explore it and pursue
Hmm.
it and overcome. What would you say to encourage someone else to pursue whatever passion God has placed in their heart?
Mm. I think that's such a great question. And so much of it is, I was talking with a friend yesterday, and so often we don't pursue our passions because of fear.
Hmm.
There's a fear of failure, or there's a fear of something that's holding us back. And I like to say, if God has put a passion on your heart, then make the pretty safe, if not assured assumption, He's also going to create a safe path and a way for you to go through. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be met with roadblocks.
Yeah.
or pain or trauma.
Mhm.
But if God's put something on your heart, there's a reason for it, and that's very possibly the reason He created you. And really, when we look at our life, like my mom always used to say, you can't take anything with you when you go. You can
Nope.
only take the souls of people who God has allowed you to influence. And so whatever you do with your passions, it's what can you take with you into eternity? And that's really, hopefully, as many people as we can. And so to deny a passion that God has put on us is to potentially deny the glory that God has given us the opportunity to take part in bringing others to Him and bringing others closer to Him. So pursue your passions not for yourself, but pursue them for the glory of the Lord, and your way will be made clear. And He promises that.
Yeah. Very good. I second that and amen that. And I think that is very good encouragement. And Jamie, if somebody is interested
Mhm.
in this book or a few of the others that you have written over the years,
Just a few.
yeah, just a few, what is the best way for someone to connect with you?
Sure. The best way to connect with me is at my website. It's jamiewrightbooks.com. Jamie is spelled Jaime
Mhm.
because my parents decided to make it difficult. So jamiewrightbooks.com. I've got all my books listed there, the ones from Bethany House, my love-inspired suspense, if you want something a little bit suspenseful but lighter. And
Okay.
then my daughter and I just came out with a YA rom-com called Love and Baseball that girls can enjoy if they want to laugh. And there's nothing creepy or spooky in that one. And it's
Okay.
all pink and happy. So
Okay. Oh, wow, that must have been a stretch for you then.
it was a
Um,
big stretch. This is why I brought my 16-year-old daughter along for fun.
You go, oh, but what a wonderful experience and what a great memory to be able to do something like that with your daughter.
It was.
That had to be a great memory maker. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for expanding my genre reading.
Well, thank
Um,
you for expanding with me.
yes, exactly. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And thanks so much for pursuing that passion for writing that God has placed
Absolutely.
in you. And thanks for spending time with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.